To be or not to be, the lump sum tax regime or the non-domicile tax regime? That is the question. That is today's question. That is today's topic. Let's dive right into it. Hello everyone, this is Javier Correa, Research and Development Associate here at Nomad Capitalist and big fan of William Shakespeare. I'm a big theater fan, by the way. If there's any Hamlet fan out there, please leave a comment down below. I absolutely love Shakespeare's plays. I think they're inspiring, and culture is one of the main things that I love about this job and about having a nomad capitalist lifestyle, being able to travel around and experience things for myself and to see what the different alternatives the world can offer is better suited for me, for my clients, and for Nomad Capitalist's clients. So today, the question that I wanted to pose, and the question that in the immortal words of Shakespeare and of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, we have essentially presented to you today, is how can we compare the lump sum tax regime and the non-domicile tax regime? Both are extremely interesting, both can be extremely advantageous, but I do believe that depending on your personality and depending on the type of lifestyle that you want to live, one may be better suited for you than the other. Now, let's give a bit of context. Which countries offer a lump sum tax regime and which countries offer a non-domicile tax regime? So let's start with the non-dom club, as I like to call it. So the non-dom club, as of now, includes countries like Malta. It includes countries like Barbados in the Caribbean. It includes countries like Cyprus in the Eastern Mediterranean, and it includes the Republic of Ireland. Unfortunately, the long-term president and long-standing, I should say, president of the non-dom club, which is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, will be exiting the club next year. However, there are some interesting developments coming out of the UK, so stay tuned for that. We will likely make a video on what changes we should expect in the UK, but as of now, the UK has left the building starting 2025, no longer part of the non-dom club, and therefore it's interesting to think about which country will take the UK's place as the president of the non-dom club. That might be an interesting topic. Stay tuned for that later as well. On the other side, we have the lump sum tax club. So there we have the lifetime president, Switzerland. Obviously, the first country to come up with a lump sum tax program from which others derive inspiration. So in the non-dom corner, we essentially have Switzerland, obviously, Italy, and then we also have Greece in the non-dom, basically, club. So obviously here you have an initial distinction, obviously, depending on where you want to relocate. We have some clients that just come to us and they'll say, look, I'm crazy about living in Switzerland. I'm crazy about living in Italy. Well, in that case, then it's pretty settled. If you really want to live there, then, the tax incentive you have available to you is either the lump sum or the non-domicile tax regime. You don't really have a choice there. However, if a client is willing to basically explore different places where they could potentially live, and it comes down to what the tax liability might potentially be, then here's where things become interesting. So under the non-domicile tax regime, in essence, you are only paying tax on locally sourced income. So for example, if I'm a non-dom tax resident of Ireland, then I will pay tax on my Irish source income, and then income remitted to Ireland that is foreign is also fully taxable in Ireland. The same thing happens in Malta, the same thing happens in Cyprus, and the same thing happens in Barbados. Obviously, there are certain differences. So for example, in the case of Malta, famously, for instance, you do not pay tax on capital gains even if remitted. Cyprus have some very interesting rules with regards to dividends and interest. So each country has a bit of its own little nuances, but in general, the rule with non-domicile tax regimes is you pay tax on locally sourced income and on income that is remitted to the country of residence. But if you have foreign income that is substantial and you leave it outside of the country of residence, then it remains untaxed in your country of residence. So the scenario is that you can live in Ireland, live in Malta, have substantial foreign income, and provided that you don't bring it in and you enjoy your wealth abroad, then you can be in a very tax advantageous scenario. So who does this work for? This works for people who basically have substantial income, but whose lifestyles can be financed with a small portion of their overall income. So for example, I had a client not too long ago, $10 million in income, give or take, in a year. But he was a pretty modest guy, one of the best stock traders I've ever met. So stock traders, I love you guys. This client of mine became a great friend, great person, and one of the best stock traders I've ever met. $10 million in income, but he lived a pretty modest lifestyle. I mean, in comparison to his income, he could finance his lifestyle with around $300,000 to $500,000 a year, depending on certain expenses, depending on certain projects he wanted to do, certain, big purchases he might do in one year and not in the next. But overall, we're talking about that he could finance his lifestyle with less than 10% of his overall income. So for him, a non-domicile tax regime worked beautifully. He essentially kept $9,900,000 essentially abroad. And when he decided to remit income, in this case, this particular gentleman decided to relocate to Ireland. He wanted to reconnect to his roots. His grandmother was Irish. He had a very close relationship with his grandmother, and he's very happy. He also wanted a soft landing. He was from North America. He wanted to be in a place where he could be understood, where he could speak his mother tongue, which is obviously English. In his case, he even decided to go for Ireland, even though in Malta he would have had the tax-free capital gains remittance, because the cultural element called him to Ireland, right? And so in this case, he essentially only pays tax on about less than 10% of his income. Around 5 to 3% of his income is taxed in Ireland. The rest is kept offshore, absolutely not taxed. And the beauty of it is he can still enjoy his wealth as long as he enjoys it overseas. So when he travels to another part of the world, whether it be North America, the Middle East, continental Europe, or even right next door in the UK, he can stay in luxury 5-star hotels or in excellent Airbnbs. He can buy expensive jewelry for his special lady. He can buy great gifts for his parents. He can, basically enjoy his wealth limitlessly as long as he does it outside of Ireland. And he doesn't mind doing that because when he goes back home, again, his lifestyle, pretty modest. So for him, a non-domicile tax regime made a lot of sense. However, I've worked with other clients who are very open and they say, listen, I have this tremendous level of income and I've worked hard for this. I want a 5-star lifestyle, right? I want a private chef. I want to have a driver waiting for me when I leave my home every day. I want my children to have the best tutors who teach them German and French and Spanish. And I want, I want to have staff at home to help out my wife. And I want to have 15 maids and nannies and whatnot. That's perfectly respectable. We've helped people go to countries where not only can they enjoy those lifestyles, where it is actually also more affordable to enjoy those lifestyles in many cases than in, North America or in many cases in one of the legacy Western countries. And that's perfectly fine. So for that gentleman in particular, or for this kind of client, obviously the lump sum tax regime becomes much more interesting. Why? Because obviously if this gentleman or if this type of client were to relocate to a non-domicile tax regime, he would have to remit a high percentage of his income just to finance his lifestyle. So again, if you have a $10 million income, but you need to use $5 million of that income to finance your lifestyle, you're going to end up with half of your income being taxable under a non-dom regime. Whereas if you go to a country with a lump sum tax regime, whether it's Italy, Switzerland, Greece, you know what your tax bill is going to be, regardless of remittance. You just get a notification from the government every year, and you pay your annual fee. Basically, I call it like a condominium fee. You essentially live there, you pay your annual fee, and they leave you alone. So if you want a 5-star lifestyle with everything I just described, then a lump sum tax regime might make a lot more sense. Essentially, you can pay that rate, and then you can remit as much money as you want to the country of residence, and you can finance your lifestyle with basically no restrictions whatsoever. Now, there are some differences. So just as I mentioned in the case of the non-doms, Malta has its own rules, Cyprus has its nuances. In the case of the lump sum tax regimes, you find that too. So Italy, for example, just increased not too long ago their lump sum from 100,000 to 200,000 euros per year. Greece, as of now, has kept it at previous levels, no changes there. Switzerland has a more complex calculation system where they take into account, obviously, your ability to pay, but then they also look at your home, they look at your foreign income in which you are claiming some kind of Swiss treaty benefit. They also look at some of your Swiss source income to make sure that it is a realistic amount of tax. So Switzerland, definitely the most complicated option, but still very interesting and still obviously the oldest one, the longest standing one, the most traditional option when it comes to lump sum. So the beauty of it is, if you decide to work with somebody like Nomad Capitalist, is that we're not going to sell you on one program. We're going to listen to you and we're going to advise you. We're going to tell you, you may be better suited for a lump sum tax regime, or you may be better suited for a non-domicile tax regime. And even within those regimes, we're going to talk about all the different options you have, because as I mentioned before, each country might have its little nuances, and if you are in a specific industry, running a specific business, or you have some specific needs, then, you know, Italy over Switzerland, Ireland over Malta, Malta over Cyprus, those are the things that we will help you decide. Those are the questions, to be or not to be. And with us, you will find the answer. Follow us on YouTube, subscribe to our Instagram, nomadcapitalist.com/apply. I'll see you in the next video.